I put out the call for the mailbag and you guys answered. So I'm going to answer your answers to the mailbag on today's episode.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at The Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL's Tuesday's episode with Seth from Locked On Wild. Go check that out. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, probably part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we dive into the mailbag. What was supposed to be Monday's episode, but Mike Greer delivered the content for me with the Mackenzie Blackwood trade. So pushed it back to today, where we're going to dig into and ask some of your burning San Jose Sharks related questions. So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. Of course, thank everybody for responding. Probably had close to like 20, almost probably closer to 30 questions, which is maybe my bad. I should do this more often. But I remember the old days when, if you've listened to Locked On Sharks for a long time, where we could just answer like every question. Yeah. So had to pare it down. I think I got about 10 solid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10 good ones here. Not to say all the rest were bad, but some of them were asked before Blackwood, and some of them are repeats, et cetera, et cetera. So one of my favorites. So gold star to Jetpack 176. What steps must the Sharks do to avoid getting stuck in the Buffalo Ottawa rebuild death loop? That's the big, right? Tanking's fun and getting draft picks are fun and all that stuff, but at some point you have to like start to do something, right? And you look at Buffalo, which is well on its way to missing the playoffs for the 1 millionth year in a row, and Ottawa, which, right, it feels like they plug one hole and then something else breaks. Like it feels like that team is not maybe ready to make the jump that they were kind of expecting to. And how do you avoid those traps? And I had Joe on from Locked On Sabres over the summer to talk about kind of this thing. And the thing that sticks with me the most with talking to him is it's never too early to kind of go for it. And I know we've had our precious Macklin Celebrini for, 2 months basically, or I guess a month and a half now, really, in reality. And seeing what we're seeing from Celebrini, I think that's the big thing is like, don't wait. But at the same time, like, don't kind of paint yourself into a corner. I think that's where the Sharks have done a good job of like identifying young talent, right? And I know Celebrini and Smith, they have a long way to go, but you've seen, especially with Macklin Celebrini, you've seen the makings of a potential like franchise altering player in him at the age of 18, and he's only going to get better. And Smith, has shown some flashes, and I think before he got injured, kind of was playing really good hockey. Building around these guys and just kind of going for it, but without painting yourself into a corner. And that part of the don't paint yourself into a corner, I think that's what like the Sens might have done, where they just kind of locked everybody up right away. And, like some of those guys are going to be, I think, are worth locking. Kachuk is worth locking up. Stützle's worth locking up. But they just paid everybody right away. And I'm usually pretty like, pay your young guys early, especially if you think that they're the guys. And I'm going to be the same thing with Eklund and Smith and with Celebrini. Just pay them now because it's going to cost you more money in the long run. But I think the Sharks, though, they've done such a good job of clearing their cap space and clearing up their cap space. And you're starting to kind of see that, right? Getting the Burns contract off and getting the Carlson contract off. And you kind of, I know Vlasic's still here for 2 more years and you have the Couture contract, but kind of the ace in the hole with the Couture contract is if you ever need to, you can just move him to LTIR. Like, just the Sharks have done a good, where they're ready to kind of be able to add pieces aggressively, veteran players, whether it's via trade, because they have a ton of picks, or not picks, but they have a ton of draft, prospects. They have some decent draft capital coming up, or in free agency. And I think that's what the Sharks will need to start to do, and is adding guys who are going to still be good over the next few years to help this team kind of start to really ramp things up here as you see Smith and Celebrini and Eklund, those guys continue to ramp things up here. So I think that's the thing, is giving yourself the flexibility to be able to pivot on the fly if you need to, but also kind of establish, knowing who your core pieces are. And I think that's where the Sharks are at right now, is they've done that, and they're probably going to get another core piece in this year's draft, which we'll talk about later. But I think that's the thing, is giving yourself flexibility, but kind of making sure you build around the guys that you think that you're going to build around. And that's, I'm hoping it's a weird answer, but I hope it makes sense of having your guys, knowing which ones are your dudes, but still giving yourself flexibility if you need to change. Kind of going with that, at SteelShark91 on Twitter asks, does general manager Mike Grier go after a big fish in free agency? Rantanen or Marner, who would you go after? I don't think those guys, the way I kind of see free agency, we're still very far away, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's another Tyler Toffoli type of guy, kind of a middle six scoring winger to add, especially if you feel like Celebrini is locked in as your 1C. And if you feel like Will Smith can go into next season as your 2C, you're going to have Alex Wenberg next year as well. Depends what you do with Granlund. We'll talk about Granlund here in a little bit, but wouldn't be surprised with that. I think the Sharks are going to be aggressive on overhauling this defense. And a name I'm just going to throw out there. Okay. And we're a long way from free agency. A lot of stuff can happen between now and then. But just a name I'm going to throw out there. It's Aaron Ekblad. He's the top of my free agency wish list. He's 28. I think he'll be 29 by the time free agency rolls around. The Panthers are going to be in a really tough position to try to pay him. Former first overall pick, 6'4" right-handed defenseman, has been extremely good. I know he's had some injury issues here and there, but he's a guy where I would be really interested in adding his services. Again, I know the injury history is not that great, but I think he solves a lot of your problems. If you sign him to a 7-year contract, he'll be 35, 36 by the time that thing's done. He's a guy who I would circle because you could offer a lot of money, and I know the contract will probably not age great, and that's with every free agent you sign. But I think him, and then you have Wallman on a nice contract. You'll have Dickinson entering the fray here soon. Mukamadulin, if those guys are on cheaper contracts, and while you have it, maybe pay a little bit more to a guy like Ekblad, that would be a guy who I'd be really interested in signing. I know the injury history stinks, but that's a guy who I'm potentially looking at as on my wildest dream free agencies. So I think that's where they go, is somewhere to try to insulate the defensive free agency, especially with the way kind of my career, I think he wants his forwards to kind of grow and develop, but I think he wants to try to rebuild the blue line on the fly here. And that would be a guy I think that the Sharks should look really, really, really hard at. So we'll get to one more here before we get to a break. So the Sharks seem to have a lot. This is from at Joyboy28 on Blue Sky. The Sharks seem to have a lot of middling prospects to resign, especially from the 2020 class. Who do you think will get re-signed? And is there room for Thrun, Mikael, and Thompson on the team next year? Yes, I think a majority of them will get re-signed, because I think one of the biggest lessons we can learn is that organizational depth, right? And having young players on cheap contracts to help insulate when things go wrong, it should be one of the big lessons that the Sharks have learned, especially during their kind of heyday, right? And how often somebody gets hurt and you start pulling pieces out, and then you got to kind of go to free agency. And with the Sharks right now, you're like, a lot of these guys, you're still kind of waiting for them to pop. Then they could pop, right? Maybe like a guy like Daniel Gushin, Thomas Borla, who I think have kind of both been playing better with the Barracuda. Like, just because like now they're not, like, some guys just take a little bit longer to develop, especially second and third and fourth and fifth round picks. Like, those guys take a little bit longer. So I'm down with basically resigning the majority of them, especially because they're cost controlled. They're young, and you need organizational depth. So as for the defenseman question, I think you can get 2, but not all 3 on the roster between Mikael and Thrun and Thompson, just because, again, I think with the way the Sharks are going to try to hopefully overhaul the defense here, those are, I think you can get 2 potentially. So let's take a break here, and then we'll talk kind of more about trade deadline stuff, including Mikael Granlund, what the Sharks should do there, and then we'll get to some of your draft questions, all that good stuff here in just 1 second. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't a search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data. And Matching Engine helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, so you get the hunch in the middle of a game. Maybe you think, I don't know, the Bengals might go down and score the winning touchdown, especially if Dallas does dumb Dallas things. You can do that over on FanDuel. You can also check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's get to some of your next questions here. Storm Guy 22 asked, considering the Blackwood trade, do you think Greer's simply going for full Schaefer Haggens sweepstake as to avoid the aforementioned creamy middle? One of my favorite terms, the creamy middle. A lot of creamy middle questions. I do enjoy that. Yes, and I talked about it on, after the Blackwood trade, but yes, this is the I think this is that final piece of okay, let's get one more in the top 5. And then we feel like Celebrini is just going to be too good to like keep us in a top 5, top 10 pick. I think that is my thinking, at least with Mike Grier, is like let Celebrini, let Smith do their thing, let Eklund do their thing, but the goaltending is probably going to be, I know Vanchek played pretty well the other night, but like goaltending is probably going to be poor. The defense is probably going to be poor. Let's get one more really nice shiny piece to pair with everything else that we have going. And then go from there. That's kind of the way I think of it, how Grier at least is looking at it. He also asked, haven't been paying attention to the AHL much. How has Beasted been? And Beasted, I think, has been playing really well with the Barracuda. Had a little bit of an injury there. You haven't seen some of the scoring, especially compared to last year, but I think his game is rounding out really nicely. He's been playing a ton on the penalty kill, which is going to be kind of his bread and butter, especially as he moves up into the NHL, especially if he's going to be that 3C, right? Of where we kind of picture him. So he's going to probably have to be a top penalty killer. One of the things I love is every time he's on the penalty kill, the Shark or the Barracuda are creating penalty like chances off of that, especially with him and Cardwell playing together. Those two guys have like a mind meld of like when to kind of get the puck and then just go with it and create an opportunity. I think he's really rounding out his game well. Like I said, the production, maybe he's taking a little bit of a dip now, but don't be surprised if, as he's kind of figuring out the rest of the details of his game, we start to see that production bounce back up here. And I've been pretty good at kind of predicting when that's happening. And I think we're going to see that here really soon from Beasted. So Emma with 2 H's, you 2 H's, Emma on Blue Sky asks, where do the Sharks seem to be feeling with Granlund? Wonder if it's a trade or re-signing is more likely. And I think that's a big question with Granlund because, right, you traded Blackwood, as Mike Grier said, right, you got an offer that was just too good to pass up for Blackwood. I'm honestly, I don't know. Part of me, like, there's, let me just go through the argument, right? Like, now that Blackwood's gone, Granlund's probably your best piece, and I think there's another question about that here soon, but Granlund's probably your best piece. The problem is, right, the $5 million, you don't have any more retention slots, so it's going to kind of eat away at whatever you get back from him. You're going to have to find another team to most likely to retain. So that kind of eats away at what you're getting back. You might have to give up something a little bit there. But at the same time, like if building around, like we mentioned at the very beginning of the show, building around Smith and Celebrini and Eklund and Zetterlund and these other guys, why can't Mikael Granlund just be like a really sick middle six player for the Sharks for the next few seasons? And like, yes, it's, you want to try to manage your assets well, but at some point you have to, right? If you don't want to be Ottawa or Buffalo, or you have to start doing something. And Mikael Granlund has proven that he can do a lot of good stuff in this system. And maybe as he doesn't get as much ice time when Celebrini kind of, continues his ascent and, other guys start to make an impact, Quentin Musties and, B-Seds and some of these other guys, maybe he loses some of that ice time, but I still think he'd be a really impactful player for you. Like, you can't just have all children running around. And Granlund is someone who, I think this organization really likes and really, wants him to be here. But I think it's just up to Granlund. If Granlund wants to go try to win somewhere, I could totally understand that. But if Granlund's happy here, I would be more than happy to keep him. So I think it just comes down to what Granlund wants to do. I think with Mike Grier, he's gonna be very open with that. And I think he's done a good job of, guys who want to be here, I'm more than happy to have you here. But if you we know what we are right now. And if you want to go try to somewhere else to win, I can totally, we're going to try to do the best we can for you. So, at Zen Pop Blue Sky asked, so now that Blackwood's been traded, what do you consider the Sharks' greatest, most likely trade chip heading to the trade deadline? So, Granlund, we just talked about. I think another one, to be honest, is Mario Ferraro. And Ferraro's been quietly out there. He's got 2 years left on his deal, or this year, the rest of this year and next year. He's got a really good price at $3.25 million. Like, teams want what if Mario Ferraro is like your 5th defenseman, you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself, and what he can do, right? He's going to do everything, everything right. And he's going to try hard. He's going to be a good guy in the locker room, all that good stuff. Don't be, if a team, again, just like the Blackwood deal, if a team offers a good, something good for you for Mario Ferraro, I think honestly, I do think that's your best trade piece. You have other guys who are going to, be available, and, the usual suspects for the Sharks of, Cody Ceci, who's in the last year of his deal, Jan Ruda, who I don't think you're going to get anything of much for. If a team I think Nico Sturm is a really solid piece, but you're not going to get, you're probably looking like a mid-round pick for somebody like that. Luke Cunnin potentially, especially if he continues to score the same way that he has been scoring. Teams like that edge and a guy who can play on penalty kill and can provide some scoring. He could be another one of those guys too. But I think if you're looking at your best trade piece, Mario Ferraro or Granlund are your two kind of big pieces that you have left. So we'll continue looking at some of the other trade questions. Also I got a couple one draft question because everyone basically asked the same type of draft question. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. Today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. If you love sports, you're going to love PrizePicks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money, whether it's hockey, football, or any other your favorite sports. PrizePicks makes it easy to get in on the action. Here's why you need to get started today. You can win up to 200 times your money on PrizePicks, and you get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. No need to win. The $50 is guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers fun weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where select player projections are discounted up to 25%. This week on PrizePicks, of course, I'm eyeing the hockey board, looking at Jack Hughes for more than 4 shots on goal and Artemi Panarin for more than 1 assist. It's simple to make my picks and make fun with friends while potentially cashing out fast. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, before we finish up, of course, do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. For your second listen, when you're done with this one, go check out one of the other great shows here at the Locked On Network. Of course, you have Locked On Fantasy Hockey. If your fantasy hockey team needs some help, they've got you covered over there. Who to drop, who to pick up on waivers, who to target in trades, all that good stuff. Or check out any other great shows here in the Bay Area, right? You got Locked On Warriors, you got Locked On Niners, Locked On Giants. Right now, the hot stove is scorching right now for the Giants. Locked On A's, plenty of great stuff here at the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. All right, let's continue. A couple more kind of trade deadline-y questions here. At Connect_RP. Who do you see Greer picking up at anyone at the deadline? Defenseman makes sense, in my opinion, if available or affordable. I think you're going to see Greer looking for kind of like Jack Thompson, guys who are probably close to making the NHL type of players, or guys like a Clean Costin type of maybe underutilized elsewhere. Bring them in and see if they can do anything in the last kind of month and a half so that's where I predict is him kind of continuing to sift to try to find some diamonds in the rough for guys who he thinks can be helpful down the road. I don't think he's going to go out and get a big player. And as we get closer to the free agent, as we get closer to I'll look at some of those guys. I did nail Jack Thompson last year. I'm still proud of myself on that one. I did get Jack Thompson right, but we'll look at that. Look at some guys who I think that the Sharks should kind of actively look for this, at the trade deadline. So GeoRock15, one of a bajillion people who asked basically, who should the Sharks draft? this year. He is questioned more specifically, best player available or focus on defense at the draft with the players of the same tier. So the goal for the Sharks right now is to get a top 4 pick, because I think I haven't done a ton of draft like research and stuff. I'm, just kind of following along with you guys, and same, my normal, I haven't really started to dig into the draft super much yet. Hopefully World Juniors coming up, that kind of usually kick starts it for me. But anyway, so we have kind of the 4 big names in the top. I think this is like its own, like kind of the first tier is you have one defenseman, Matthew Schaefer, who's playing with Erie. He is left-handed defenseman. He's the best defenseman in the draft right now. Then you have 3 forwards who are all kind of in the same. James Haggens, who's playing over at Boston College. He's kind of taking the Will Smith spot. You have Porter Matrone, right winger, and then you have Misa. You have Misa. Is it Matthew Misa? I know Michael Misa. Sorry. Michael Misa. 2 OHL guys there. Your job is to get one of those 4 guys. If you get one of those 4 guys, great. Perfect. That's what you want to do. Always best player available, because you never know what your needs could change at any moment, right? If we're talking about, man, the Sharks need a defenseman. If you go out and sign like Aaron Ekblad, guess what? You don't need a defenseman anymore. You have a defenseman for the next 8-7 years. Like, you don't need a top tier defenseman. And then you have Sam Dickinson. Like, you have guys there. So always best player available. If you're like, especially at the top of the draft, whoever you think is going to be the best of those guys you pick. Who do I think is going to be the best? I don't know right now, to be honest. I just want one of those 4 guys that I mentioned. If the Sharks walk away next June with one of those 4 guys, awesome. And we got plenty of time between now and then to debate which of those 4 guys, and we'll have plenty of conversations on this podcast about who they should draft, especially as it doesn't feel like there's a number 1 right now. And we're also 6.5 months away from the draft anyway. So we'll have plenty of our friends on to help us try to figure out who the Sharks should draft there. But I want one of those 4 guys. Matrone, Misa, Schaefer, or Haggens. You get me one of those 4. Awesome. We're ready to roll. Like, let's go. So, and the Sharks are putting themselves in the position to be able to get one of those 4 guys right now. So, yeah, too early right now for me to give my, like, this is the dude, because who knows? Like, there's so much stuff can happen between now and then. So, good friend of the show who's been on here, Brian Bastion, asks, any tips for folks new at being a fan of a lottery team? Of course, Brian covers the Nashville Predators. Is a big fan of the Preds. He's been on the show before to talk about the Preds. I think, one, find joy in like the dumb things, whether it's just full on embracing the tank like we did last year, enjoying when your prospects do something fun. 2, don't get attached to players because, yeah, all of a sudden they're gone. And 3, yeah, love the draft. Those are my 3 tips. Get to know the draft. Enjoy the little things because you don't get a lot of them, and don't get attached to players. Those are my 3 like tips for following a tanking team, or a lottery team. All right, finally, at JKens 0608 asks, who's got the best bars of the holiday inflatables? Beautiful. Sharks, you guys did it again. Even have the like Jason Demers, like curse to record it and then get traded before the video comes out. Like Mike Greer doing what you have to do to keep this thing going. No. The one I was the most impressed with has to be Nico Sturm. Because like Nico Sturm, right? Super serious dude. Like every time he's done an interview, super serious dude. Like I had to double take, because I'm pretty good at like kind of telling who's who, and I was like, that's Nico Sturm. like when they're kind of doing like showing some of the pictures of like the guys in the background. And then when he like did his verse, he was great. Nico Sturm, I think he's the winner of the video. Jack Thompson also had his line about like I'm soft and bouncy or whatever it was. His line was great. I mean, they did the whole thing was great. The Swedes, of course, were excellent. My Swedish son, changing careers apparently. So, but no, it was great. 100% like amazing. I love that they're sending like the inflatables to like some of the well-known, kind of people around the Sharks and stuff. Like I know Brody Brazil got one. I think one of the Teal Island guys got one as well. Like, just an amazing job by the Sharks as always. I know like a lot of fan bases, and I was wondering if like, because they put up the video, like the first one a couple days before, and I was like, are we getting like the remix? Are we getting something new here soon? But yeah, great job. I think Nico Sturm though, because you just didn't see it coming. I think with Nico Sturm, like that was one of those just like, oh my, like that's Nico Sturm. Yeah, no, great job. Super cheesy. My poor wife was like, she's like, I had secondhand embarrassment. I was like, well, you're supposed to. That's the point of it. But great job by them. Great job. Randy Hahn killed it as always. Then you had Celebrini and Smith just kind of waiting in the wings. So in 10 years, when we get the next version, they're going to be, hopefully they'll be involved too. So, that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about, of course, the Sharks Blues. We also got a Barracuda game tomorrow as well. Shakir Mukumadulin making his season debut with the Sharks. So plenty of great stuff coming up here at Locked On Sharks. Make sure you are following along wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well, or do both. Both is great. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.